Hello everyone, this is Ankit Jain. I welcome you all to my channel Tech Journey with Ankit. Today is day 49 of our LWC Bootcamp series, and in today's session we will be explore the concept of infinite/lazy loading on the data table. So we are also continuing our data table series where we are exploring each data table concepts one after the other by implementing it practically as well. There are few videos that I already released previously on the data table. Definitely check out my channel for all those data table related videos. In today's session, we will be focused more on the how to implement the infinite/lazy loading on the data table. So before we get started, a quick intro about me. My name is Ankit Jain. I do have more than 10 years of experience in the Salesforce ecosystem where I got an opportunity to work on the different clouds of the Salesforce, including the Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, CPQ, Billing, as well as on the Financial Services Cloud. I do have my technical expertise on the admin, Apex, LWC, as well as on the integration. In case you folks like to get the regular updates about the videos that I publish on my channel, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also connect with me on the LinkedIn as well as Telegram, where we discussed all the queries that you folks encounter while implementing the logic that we are discussing in the video. So before we move further, let's try to understand what is actually the lazy loading. So basically there are two ways to load the data into the data table. One approach here is while initializing the data table or while loading the data table, you go and load all the data into the data table. So this kind of an approach works well whenever we are working with the limited set of data. But in case you are working with the bulk amount of data, it is not a good practice to load everything onto the data table while loading the data table. The reason being it will impact the performance of the component. So in such scenarios, we go for the another approach, and that is referred as the lazy loading. So what is actually the lazy loading? Lazy loading means loading the data on the data table when it is required. Rather than we go and load the data table on the data table on the initial load, here we should be loading the data only when it is required. So it is kind of an optimization technique so that the data will be loaded on the data table on demand rather than we go and load the complete data on the data table. So how to work on the lazy loading? For that we have to go and enable the infinite loading on the data table. This is one of the attribute that we have to specify while defining the data table. So to enable the infinite loading or to define the lazy loading on the data table. Once you go and enable this particular attribute, one event with the name of load more event will be available by using which you can load the subset of the data onto the data table. How to do that, I will show you practically as well. But before that, let's try to understand the syntax about the lightning data table. So first few fields which are very common that we have already discussed multiple times in our series, we have to go and specify the key field by using which we should be identifying the rows. We have to go and specify the data for the records that we have to load. We have to specify the column attributes as well, what all different columns that we want to load on our data table. These are the two key attributes that we have to specify whenever we are working on the infinite loading. First one here is we have to go and specify the enable infinite loading. By putting this particular attribute, we are enabling the infinite scrolling feature on our data table. And as we are using this attribute, we are getting one more event from the data table with the name of load more. And by calling the apex method to load the subset of the data, we can do that by using the onload more event. This event will be automatically triggered once the user scroll to the bottom of the table. Automatically this event will be triggered. There are two more attributes that I generally prefer to use whenever I am using the infinite loading. Again, it's not mandatory. It is for my own demo that I will be using this attribute. The first attribute here is to hide the checkbox column. Right, by default the checkbox are always available whenever we are populating the data table, so I want to hide those checkboxes. So for that I will be using the hide checkbox column, and another attribute that I will be using here is the show row number column so that I can show to you folks how many rows are actually loaded on the data table. So these other attributes are optional like the hide checkbox column or the show row number, that we'll be using only for our demo purpose, but these two key attributes are mandatory whenever you are using the concept of infinite loading. Now, there are two approaches by which you can go and load the infinite data. First approach is by using the offset. So whenever you are writing down the SOQL query, you can use the offset keyword to load the records or to control the records that you want to load in the form of subset. But one of the limitation of using the offset query here is we can only load maximum 2000 record, because in the offset we can specify the maximum value as 2000, so we cannot go and load more than 2000 records by using the offset in the SOQL. Another approach here is by using the ID field. We all know that whenever the record is created in the Salesforce, the record ID is the field which is automatically generated. Again, Salesforce do generate this field automatically in some random fashion, but this ID field have one unique attribute. The ASCII value for every ID field that it is generated, it is always greater than the previously generated ID. Again, I am repeating, one of the key attribute about the ID field here is the ASCII value of the new generated ID field is always greater than the previously generated ID. So another approach that we can use here is we can always use the last record ID from the table, and we can retrieve the next lot of fresh records. We can retrieve the next lot of fresh records. By using this particular approach, you can fetch any number of records by using the infinite loading. But from the first approach, we do have the limitation that we can only load 2000 records. This is the approach that we will be using in our demo as well, because there are lots of videos which are available on the YouTube, and also lots of blogs are also written how to use the offset whenever you have to fetch the limited number of records from the data table. This approach works very well whenever you are working with the limited set of record and your record count is always going to be below to 2000. But in case you guys will be working on the huge number of records, then you should be using this ID field approach, right? So I will be going with this ID field approach in the today's demo session to implement the lazy loading. So what we will be implementing in the today's session, let me first give you an overview and then we will see how to implement it. So we will be creating this data table. On my data table, you can see that in total I do have around 3018 records, and I am loading the records in the chunk of 500. So as soon as I scroll down to the 500, you can see that automatically the infinite loading is invoked, and I will be getting the next fresh of 500 records. I will be getting the next load of 500 record. This is how we can go and scroll down to 500 records every time, and every time we will be getting the additional number of records available on my data table. So let's see how we can implement this type of a feature on our data table. So to get started, first I am navigating to the Visual Force editor, and here I will be creating one controller file. So in my controller file, let me first go and create the controller file. So here I am putting the controller file as infinite load controller. This is the Apex file that I am creating. So I am creating here the multiple method. The first method that I am creating here, which will give me the initial load that I need to put on my data table. So here I go and create the aura enabled method, and here I'll be returning the list of account. So here I go and put the list of account that I have to return. Method must be static. So here I am putting the static, and the method name that I am putting up here is load data, okay, by ID. So what I want to do here is whatever the records that I am loading on my data table, as you can see here as well, I want these records, it should also be sorted based on the name as well. So while loading the record, I want to make sure that we are not only loading the records based on the ID, but my rows should also be sorted based on the name. So that's what I am doing up here. Here I am loading the records by ID, but I will also make sure that it is sorted based on the name as well. So let me show you how to write down the query for this. So here I go and put the return. Whatever the columns that you have to fetch, you can specify that columns here. Let me go and put here ID, name, industry, rating, from, account. Okay, and I said I want order by this based on the name as well as the ID. ID is the order by I need to do, because I need to make sure that I am controlling here the loading of the records based on the ID, but I also want to control the loading should be done based on the name as well. So that's why under the order by clause, I'm specifying both the parameters here. And on my initial load, I only want to load the 500 records. So here I go and put that limit as well. According to your business case, you can go and specify any number of limit. That is completely up to you. Okay, so this is how I have defined my first method here, and this is how my method will look like. Now, the next thing that I will be doing here is I am creating another method which will give me the next set of records. Let me also enable the caching here as well so that we do get the better performance. So here I go and put cacheable equal to true. I am defining another method or enabled. Again, I am specifying here cacheable equal to true, and here I am putting the method name as public static. Again, I need to return the list of account, and here I am putting the method name as load more data. And in this method I need to go and load the records based on my last record. So here I am getting the two input parameter, that is first is the last name, and second parameter that I am getting here is the last ID, because based on my last record I need to go and load the remaining set of record. There can be another possibility that we have to take into consideration, that there might be two records which is having the same account name. So we have to also keep that possibility into the consideration. So let's see how we can write down our where clause for that. So here I am putting again the return statement, and here I am returning the select, let's say ID, name, industry, comma, rating from account, and here I go and specify my where clause where the name, it must be greater than whatever the names that user is specifying or user have last used. So we want to get all the names, or as I said, there is also a possibility that our name can be duplicate as well. So to cover that possibility, here I go and put name is equal to whatever the values that we have for the last time, whatever the values that we do have for the last time. And also we have to make sure that we are getting the records which are greater than the last ID that we have used. So here I go and put and uh, ID, it must be greater than the whatever the last ID that we have used, and the ID, it must be greater than the last ID that we have used. So I am getting all the columns, right? And here I have defined my where condition where the name is greater than the last name, or the name is equal to last name and ID is greater than the last ID. Now again I have to make sure that whatever the record that I am getting, it must be sorted based on the order as well as the name. So here I go and put order by name comma ID, and again I only want to limit my search for the first 500 records. So here I go and put the limit clause as well, so that I will be getting only the 500 records here maximum. So on my next load also I will be getting the 500 record. This is how I am making sure that by writing down the where condition and by using the order by clause. Another thing that I need to do here, as you can see that I will be getting the in total 3018 records, right? So I also need to know how many records that I am loading on my data table. So to do that, I am writing one aggregate query to get the count. So here I go and define at the rate or enabled cacheable equal to true. Go and correct the spelling, cacheable equal to true. And here I am writing down another method which will return me the record count. As I need to get the record count, it will be an integer value, and here I am putting the method name as count of accounts. Now here what I need to return here is the record count. How we get the record count? Answer to this is aggregate queries. By writing down the aggregate queries, we can get the count. So here I go and write down my aggregate queries. So I want select count of ID from account, right? And whenever we are writing down the aggregate queries, we always get in return the aggregate result. So here I am storing it into the aggregate result AGR. Whatever the response that we are getting, I am storing that into the aggregate result. But from the aggregate result, I am only interested in the count. So what I am doing here is I am giving the alias name to my field because this is the field which is generated dynamically. This is the field which is not present in our S object. So here I am giving the alias name to my particular column as the record count. So how to fetch the values from the aggregate query now? So to do that, we have to use the agr dot get method whenever we have to fetch the values from the column, and here I am passing the alias name. But whenever we do use the agr dot get, it always returns the object. But what I need to return here is the integer. So here I'll go and typecast it in the form of integer. And let me go and return the output. Let me go and return the output. So there are multiple things that we are doing here. We are making the query and we are getting the values from the count, but this agr.get, it always returns the object. My return type should be integer. So here I have typecast it into the form of integer. Let me go and deploy this and check whether we are making any syntax errors. So here I go and deploy this. Okay, meanwhile it is deploying. What we can do here is, yeah, it is created successfully, so that's good. Meanwhile, we go and create our lightning web component as well, so that we can go and make a call to this method. So here I go and create the lightning web component, and I'm making the name here as infinite loading data table. Right, the first thing that I'm doing in my lightning web component here is I'm importing all these three methods that I have to invoke. So here I go and perform the import operation from @salesforce slash apex slash infinite load, and the first method here is load data by id. So let me like this, I'm importing other methods as well. Another method here is load more data. So here I go and specify the load more data, and the third method that I need to go and invoke here is the count of account. So here I go and specify the count of account as well. Right, now the next thing, I need to go and load the data table on my component. So we can get started from always the component library. So here I again take you back to the component library. So here I am putting the component library data table. That can be our good starting point rather than we go and write down our complete code from the scratch. So we do get the reference code from here, and then we will go and expand our code. So this is my lightning data table code. So here I go and copy this from here, navigate to my HTML file and get it pasted here. Right, now what all the different attributes that we do have here? First is the key field. So here I go and specify the key field as an ID, because ID is the unique ID is the field name that we are getting in from our controller. Here you can see that we are getting the ID, so that's why make sure that you are putting the ID in the correct case. Next thing that we do have the data. So let me navigate to the JavaScript file and define the data attribute, which is nothing but an array of records. And the next attribute that we do have here is the column. So how the column should be structured? For that, again I'm navigating to the component library, navigating to the JS. Here they have provided the dummy structure of the column, so I am copying this from here, navigating to my JavaScript file and pasting it here as well. Now, let me go and name the columns here. So the first name that I am giving up here is the name. So that will be my record name. Second column name that I am giving here is the industry, and the field name also I am putting here as an industry. Data type here, in case you are not specifying, by default is text, so you can take out that data type. And the third one that we do have here is the rating. Again, the field name for that I am putting here the rating. Label name you can give anything, field name is mandatory, it must be the same as the API name. We have discussed that multiple times in our past sessions, right? So these are the three columns that I need to load. So here I go and take it out, and I do have my columns here. Once your columns are ready, you can again come back to your component library, and here you can see that they are defining one property. So we will again go and define the similar property in our component as well. This is how we got the initial data table on our data table. Initial data on our data table. Now our job here is to load this data. So to do that, what we will be doing here is, first thing, we will be using the life cycle methods to load the initial data. What all the different life cycle methods we have already discussed. I will appreciate if any one of you let me know in the comment section what all the different life cycle hooks that are available on the Lightning Web Component. Here to load the initial data, I am making a call to the lifecycle hook method, that is the connected callback method, and here I will be making a call to load the data. So to load the data I am creating another method with the name of load data. So here my job from the connected callback method is to simply invoke this method. This method will be called automatically by the framework when the component is loaded, right? And in this method I will make an apex call to go and load the data. So all the apex call needs to be asynchronous, so I am creating here the asynchronous method. So what all the different things that we have to do in this method? First, what I will be doing here is I will be getting the total count, right? To get the total count we already defined one method, that is the count of account. So here I go and use this method, await count of account, right? And here I am making a call to this method. Whatever the output that we will be getting here, we will be storing that output into the property. Let me go and create the property here, total records, and I'm initializing this with 0. So let me go and put up here this dot total records that we are getting by making the count. The next thing here that I need to do here is I need to go and make a call to load the initial set of record. For that we do have the method load data by ID. So let me make a call to this method as well. So here I go and put await load data by ID. So whatever the output that we are getting by making a call to this method, I am storing that into the data property. So here I do have this dot data in which I am storing whatever the records that we are getting on our initial load. Another thing that you guys observe here is I am also populating here how many records are loaded. So initially how many records are loaded, that also I need to populate into another property. So here I go and create another property as a records loaded, and I am initializing this with the 0. So here I go and populate this value as well. This dot records loaded is equal to this dot data dot length, this dot data dot length. Whatever is the size of an array, we can see that that many records are loaded. It's always a good practice that whenever you are using the async await approach to do the error handling by using the try catch block. So here also I am doing the same thing and shifting my complete code in this try catch block, so that if in case anything has been failed, we do have the error logs to validate why certain things are failing. So here I go and put the console.log, and here I go and put the error while loading, and here I go and put the error message, right? So my initial data is loaded. Now the next thing that I need to do on my HTML file, as you guys have already seen on the deck that we discussed, to enable the infinite loading we have to go and specify a few additional attributes on our data table. So let me go and specify those attributes here. First attribute that I am specifying here is the enable infinite loading. Second attribute, because to load the next records I need to make a call to the JavaScript method, and that we will be doing by using the event on load mover event. So here I will be using the on load mover event, and here we are calling the method. You can give any name, but let me use the name here as the load mover data. This method name you can give anything. Also I don't want to have the checkbox on my data table, right? So here I go and hide the checkbox column is equal to true, and also I want the row number should be there on my data table. So here I go and put show row number column is equal to true. Show row number column is equal to true. This is how we will be defining our data table. Now we have to go and implement this method to make a call to the another method now. So here again I navigate to my JavaScript file, creating another async method to make a call, because we have to do the another apex call. Again I am doing that with the try catch block, and here I will be making a call to load the another set of record. But before we go and load another set of record, the first thing that I want to do here is I want to enable the spinner. How you will be enabling the spinner? So that the user will know that the next set of records are loading. To do that, here I will be using the event. So here I go and apply the concept of destructuring to get the target. What is destructuring? We already discussed in our previous sessions. So here I am destructuring the event, and from the target, here I am using the target one special attribute, that is the is loading attribute. This is the attribute by default we are getting whenever we are enabling the infinite loading. So here to display the spinner, here I am setting this value as true. Another thing that I want to do here is whatever the initial set of records that we do have here, I want to get that I want to store that set of records into the one of the local variables. So here I do have the current records is equal to this dot data. I am storing that current set of records into one of the variable. So that is also done. Now I need to make a call to my apex method. So this is the apex method with to which I need to make a call, that is the load mover data. So here again I am using the async await approach, making a call to the load mover data. But this method, it will take the two input parameters. One is the last name and second is the last ID. So whenever we are to pass any parameters in the form of imperative apex, we always pass in the form of object. So here I go and create the object. Make sure that whatever the parameter names that you have given here, you are giving the exact same name here. So here I am putting the last name. How to pass the value, I will come back to that in a while. The second parameter that we have to pass here is the last ID. So here I go and copy the last ID as well. Here I go and copy the last ID as well. So what I need to pass here is the last name, as well as we have to pass here is the last ID. So how we can go and fetch the last record? To do that, I will be getting the last record from my current records here. So here let me put here let last record is equal to, so to access the last record, here I am specifying the current record. Because this is the array, we can say that get the total length, subtract the 1. Get the total length, subtract the 1. It is more like a same. For example, I do have an array with the value stored as a0 as 1, a1 as something else, let's say 11, a2 something as for example let's say 12, right? And if someone asks me to get the a1 value, what we'll be doing here is I'm specifying here let x is equal to a1, but we are making it more dynamic this time, right? Or someone is asking me to fetch the a2, so I am specifying here a2, but I'm making this more dynamic. How I'm making it more dynamic? So here I go and put let x is equal to a of what is the length of an array. So here I go and put a dot length, right? So we to get the total length of an array. The total length of an a is 3. So by default we will be getting here the solution as 3 minus, we are minusing it 1. So a of 3 minus 1, basically we are getting the 2 here. So it is one of the short form that I am using, right? Where I am getting the last record. Once we do have the last record, we can easily fetch the last name. So from here I am getting the last name, and also I am getting the last ID as well, and I am getting the last ID as well. Again, whatever the records that we are getting from here, I am getting that stored into the another local variable. Let's say here I am putting the variable name as uh, new records. I am putting the variable name as new record. Now, whatever the current records that we do have and whatever the new records that we do have, I need to again get this populated into the data variable. So what I am doing here is, here I go and populate this dot data one more time by using the spread operator. To use the spread operator, you have to use the three dots followed by the property name. First one I do have here is the current records, and followed by that I do have the new records as well. I do have the new records as well. This is how I am populating the current records. In addition to that, I am populating the new record. I am populating the current record as well as I am populating here the new record, and my data is updated here. Once your data is loaded, it's always, you have to always go and stop the spinner that we have started. So here I go and put target dot is loading is equal to false, so that the spinner that we have started, we are making it stop. Also here what we have done, we have to recalculate the value of how many number of records are loaded. So what I am doing up here is Once I go and populate this, here I go and again recalculate how many records are loaded by using again this dot data dot length, by using again this dot data dot length. This is how we have recalculated the values for the number of records that it is loaded. Let me go and expose this component on the data loader and check. Sorry, let me go and expose this component on the app builder and check how the component is coming, and then we will go and add the other detail. So here I go specifying the expose parameter and putting the target here as an app page. Let me go and deploy this. Okay, meanwhile it is deploying. In my org, I do have the very limited number of records available on the account object, right? So for the testing, we need to go and create the dummy records for testing. So to do that, I'm navigating to the debug, and here I go and create the records for my testing. So here I go and put the account list is equal to new list of account. In case in your org you already have large number of records, you don't have to follow this step. In my org I hardly have 15-20 records, that's why I'm doing this step here. So here I go and put uh, account list. So here I go and populate the record for, let me put here integer I is equal to 0, I less than, let's say I want to create around 3000 records for my testing, and here I go and put the I plus plus. After that, here I am creating the instance of an account. It's very simple Apex that I am writing. I'm populating here the default parameter. So here I go and put test plus I. I'm populating here the industry is equal to energy, and populating here the rating is equal to hot. Right? Once the account is instantiated, we can go and add that account into the account list dot add, and here I go and put the ACC. Once all the accounts are added into the list, now the next thing that we will be doing here is we will be inserting the account record. So here I go and put the insert account list. So by executing this part from the anonymous window, we are creating around 3000 records for our testing. Let me go and execute this. Now coming back to the org one more time, let me navigate to the app page. So I do have the app page with the name of LWC Bootcamp. Navigating here, adding the component on my page, clicking on edit page. Let me check if the component is created. Yes, the component is created. Component name is infinite loading data table. So let me go and add that component here. Yeah, this is my, I do have my component infinite loading data table. Dragging it, dropping it here, clicking on save. You can see that the records are loaded on my component. That means the functionality is working as expected. We will try to scroll down and check if the next set of records are also loading as expected or not, and then we will add the header on my data table, right? So whatever the records that we have added, everything is coming up here. If I scroll down till 500 records, because we have initially loaded the 500 records, so yeah, you can see that the next set of records are also loaded here. The next set of records are also loaded here. If I further scroll down, you will see that the next set of records will also be loaded. So that part is working as expected. Only thing that we have to do here is we have to go and add the header to our component. So to add the header to our component, again I am taking the help of the SLDS library, and here I go and put the SLDS header so that I will get the option of page header. You can also search from the SLDS library from here and look for the page header. It's one and the same thing. You can also search from here and look for the page header. This is the type of header that I want to add to my component. So I'm copying this reference code from here, navigating back to my component and going here and pasting that code here. Let me also increase the width of my component here a bit. It's coming very small size. So let me go and increase the width here. more 500 pixel so that the page size will be much bigger because I do have the lots of real estate available on my page. Now here on my component, I don't want to use this SVG file. So before I go and remove this, let me add one lightning icon here. So here I am putting the lightning icon. I am putting here the icon name mm, as a standard account, as well as the next thing that I want to put here is whatever the classes that we do have available at the SVG, I can use the similar classes here as well. So let me go and add that class. Rest of the things are not required. So we can go and definitely take this out from here, and let me go and close this component. Okay, here we are getting the error, but I believe we can ignore this because this SLDS class is depreciated, so that's fine. In case you don't want, you can also take that out, but again, I believe we'll not get any errors because of this. So here I am putting the assertive text as an account, right? Title, I want to give them here as the mm, load account using finite loading. You can put the same heading as well. So here I go and put the same heading, and this is where I want to put the summary, how many total records are loaded. So here I go and put total records which are loaded, and here I am putting the records loaded as well, how many records are loaded. So how I can get the total number of records which are loaded? To do that, I do have the property available, that is the total records. So I am populating the value from this property, and how many records are loaded. For that we do have another property available, that is the record loaded property. So here I go and use that property as well. Now I believe everything looks good. Let me go and start deploying this, and let's see whether we are getting the functionality working as expected or not. So here I go, refresh my page. So you can see that we are getting the very good header. As expected, we are getting the summary. In total, we do have the 3014 records. So we are also getting the bit bigger page width. So that is also good. So here, if I scroll down for the 500 records, my next set of records are also loading. Here you can see that I am getting that spinner. And once the records are loaded, we are good. Like this, we can scroll down till any number of record. As I said, with the help of the offset attribute, we do have the limitation that we can load maximum 2000 records, but by using this approach, we can load even more than 2000 records as well, right? So here you can see that now we will be able to load more than 2000 records as well, right? That is where this kind of an approach is very helpful. That is where this kind of an approach is very helpful. I hope you folks found this particular session helpful and got some learning from this session. Do share your thoughts in the comment section if you found this helpful or not. Thank you. Have a good time, folks.